Chosen one. Listen carefully. This moment isn't random. Heaven has paused your scrolling because God wants your attention. You have been running, questioning, searching for signs in a storm. And now the voice you've been waiting for is whispering through these words. You were never rejected, you were redirected. You remember the sting of doors slamming in your face. The job you thought was meant for you. The person you trusted who suddenly walked away. The dream that collapsed right when it started to bloom. You felt small, unseen, forgotten. But what if those closed doors weren't punishments, they were protection? Sometimes God blocks what you want because He's guarding what you need. The rejection that broke you was the hand of heaven, steering you away from disaster, like a captain changing the ship's course just before a hidden reef. He altered your route to keep your destiny from sinking. There was once a young man named Elias, full of plans and ambition. He prayed, studied, worked hard, and believed everything was falling into place. Then, one by one, his opportunities vanished. A scholarship denied. A friendship betrayed. A love lost. He thought God was silent. But later, he learned those losses were divine edits. God wasn't erasing his story, He was rewriting it. Today, Elias mentors others, telling them, rejection was the road that led me home. No, that's the truth. Heaven wants you to feel tonight. The detours you curse are the directions God is blessing. You're not lost, you're being led. You may think your life has fallen off track, but you are standing exactly where God wants to reroute you. The pain that tried to destroy you is actually the compass turning you toward purpose. Every person who walked out, every plan that crumbled, was part of heaven's choreography. Sometimes God must shake the ground beneath you so you stop clinging to places He never meant you to stay. The earthquake isn't punishment, it's movement. He is shifting you toward the land of promise. Think of a painter brushing over layers of color. From up close, it looks messy, random strokes, splatters of what seems like chaos. But when you step back, you see the masterpiece forming. Your rejections were brushstrokes of divine intention. According to what is revealed in the book of Proverbs, chapter 16, verse 9, in their hearts humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. That verse is your anchor right now. You made plans, but heaven made direction. The reroute you resisted is the reason you'll arrive at destiny on time. There's a version of you that would have settled if that door had opened. God closed it so you could grow. You were never meant to stay where comfort kept you small. He redirected you toward the fire that would refine you, not the crowd that would confine you. So lift your head. Wipe those tears that carry yesterday's confusion. The rejection you faced was never the absence of God. It was evidence of His involvement. Heaven didn't turn away from you. Heaven turned you toward what is next. And when that realization lands in your spirit, peace will fill the places where pain used to live. The anger will melt. The questions will quiet. You'll finally understand that every detour was deliberate. This message finds you because it's time to see rejection for what it truly is. Redirection, wrapped in disguise. God is still writing. The story is still unfolding. If this word speaks to your heart, show it matters, like this message. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe to stay connected to these divine moments. Comment 111 if you know this was for you. Because the truth remains, what looked like rejection was heaven moving you closer to purpose. And when God redirects, it's never backward, it's always higher. Heaven has not forgotten your name. Even when it feels like everyone else moved on, God is still watching, still weaving, still aligning the details. The same hand that allowed rejection will also release restoration at the appointed time. Hold your peace. Redemption is near. You are walking into a chapter that will make sense of everything. Every unanswered prayer, every night of tears will reveal its purpose. What once felt like an ending will prove to be the redirection that saves your destiny. God wastes nothing, not even your pain. Stand firm. In this truth, divine timing never misses. What belongs to you cannot be taken, delayed, or denied. The rejection that tried to bury you became the soil for resurrection. Soon, the same people who left will witness your rising. Heaven is not done yet. You have felt the weight of rejection, the sting that settles deep, the silence that echoes after someone walks away. You've replayed the moments in your mind, trying to understand what went wrong, wondering if you could have done something differently. The truth is, you couldn't have. What left you was never meant to stay. Sometimes the hardest part of being chosen is not being accepted by the world around you. You gave your best. You loved honestly. You showed up with pure intentions. Yet, people still turned their backs. Doors still closed, and opportunities still slipped through your fingers. It wasn't because you were unworthy, it was because heaven was moving you beyond where comfort could contain you. Rejection has a sound. It's the cracking of something that can no longer hold your destiny. The moment you outgrow a season, the walls begin to press in. God allows discomfort not to destroy you, but to push you toward expansion, like a butterfly breaking free from its cocoon. The pressure was necessary for your wings to form. You didn't lose favor. You lost what could no longer carry it. The job, the friend, the relationship, they were never designed to survive the next level of your calling. Sometimes God removes your audience to refine your authenticity. He separates you from noise so you can finally hear His voice. The rejection that wounded you is the very instrument heaven used to purify your heart. The pain you feel is not a punishment, it's the chiseling of divine craftsmanship. Each heartbreak, each closed door, each misunderstanding has shaped your spirit into a vessel strong enough to hold glory. The ancient words, recorded in the book of Romans, chapter 8, verse 18, still speak softly to your wounded places. I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. You see, glory is never birthed without groaning. The ache you carry is evidence of transformation. You are being prepared for something far greater than what rejected you. Heaven is polishing the unseen parts of you, the humility, the endurance, the discernment that will sustain the next season. Think of a potter shaping clay. The wheel spins fast. The pressure is firm, and the clay cannot control the process. Yet, in the potter's hands, what feels like breaking is actually forming. That's where you are. God is shaping you under pressure, molding you through rejection, sculpting you into a vessel that will not crack under weight. There was once a woman named Mara who felt invisible to the world. Every door she knocked on closed. Every friendship she invested in faded. She thought she was cursed. But one night, while praying, she sensed a quiet voice saying, "You are not being rejected, you are being redirected into refinement." Months later, a new opportunity arose, one that fit her perfectly. One that would never have appeared had the previous doors remained open. The rejection had carved space for her blessing. Mara's story mirrors yours. What hurt you is actually helping you. You are not being stripped, you are being streamlined. The unnecessary is being removed, so the essential can remain. Rejection feels cruel when you're in it, but divine. When you look back, one day, you'll thank God for what didn't work. You'll realize that every delay was protection from premature exposure. You weren't denied, you were delayed for perfection. So let this truth settle in your heart. Rejection is not the evidence of your failure, it is the confirmation of your calling. Those who rejected you couldn't see your worth because God blinded them to what was never theirs to carry. Their inability to recognize your value does not diminish it. You were never meant to convince them, you were meant to outgrow them. You may still feel the ache now, but even pain serves a holy purpose. It cracks open the hard shell around your heart, allowing grace to flow in. You are being softened, strengthened, redefined, and when the time is right, the glory that emerges from your brokenness will make sense of every unanswered question. Do not despise the rejection. It is proof that heaven is reordering your steps. You are being guided away from imitation and toward authenticity. What you lost cannot compare to what's coming. Keep walking. Keep trusting. The road that once felt like loss will soon reveal itself as the very path that led you home to destiny. You are not behind, not forgotten, not misplaced. Every step, even the painful ones, is woven with divine intention. The path that felt broken will soon shine with heaven's undeniable purpose. You've wondered if rejection meant you failed God. You've asked yourself whether the silence after the storm was punishment. But listen closely. Your pain has always had purpose. Heaven's silence was not absence. It was preparation. God was teaching you to recognize His voice even when everything else went quiet. Every chosen one must pass through this sacred silence. It is the wilderness between promise and fulfillment, the space where God breaks the need for validation and builds the strength of faith. You cannot be directed by heaven if you still crave applause from earth. That is why He allowed rejection to remove the noise that competes with His whisper. Sometimes, what feels like being ignored is actually God inviting you into intimacy. When the world turns its back, you finally face heaven without distraction. You learn to depend not on who leaves, but on who stays. There was once a young man named Darren who served faithfully in his church. He sang, volunteered, prayed for others, but still felt unseen. When leadership overlooked him for a position he thought was his, he felt crushed. Maybe I'm not called, he whispered to himself. But God had different plans. In his private pain, Darren began to worship alone in the quiet corners of his home. What he didn't know was that a new door was opening elsewhere. Months later, he was invited to lead worship in a place that reached thousands, something far beyond what he imagined. What looked like rejection was the training ground for divine redirection. Your story may feel similar. You've given everything, and yet it seems like heaven has gone quiet. But silence doesn't mean abandonment. It means incubation. Seeds grow in silence, not in noise. God is rewriting your understanding of failure. The closed doors you cried over were never meant to humiliate you. They were meant to humble you, to prepare your spirit to handle what's next. Divine promotion always comes after divine pruning. Heaven knows when you're ready. And readiness often requires rejection. You can't carry glory with an unbroken ego. So God allowed people to misjudge you, misunderstand you, and even mock you, not to destroy you, but to refine you. You are becoming the kind of person who can stand alone and still believe. You are learning that your worth does not depend on applause, but on anointing. The pain you endured is not wasted, it's becoming wisdom. As the Apostle wrote in the first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 2, verse 9, "No eye has seen, no ear has heard, and no human mind has conceived the things God has prepared for those who love Him." Oh, this is the promise hidden beneath rejection. There is glory waiting that far outweighs the pain. The eyes that once overlooked you will witness your elevation, but it won't be about revenge, it will be about revelation. They will see what God saw all along. There's a holy beauty in being misunderstood. It forces you to anchor your identity in God alone. You stop chasing validation and start pursuing vision. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start declaring, "Use me." Oh, the truth is, the rejected ones are often the resurrected ones. God takes what others dismiss and breathes destiny into it. You are that vessel. You are being shaped for impact, not applause. When you finally see where rejection led you, gratitude will replace grief. You'll look back and realize that the people who left made room for the presence that stayed. You'll understand that every lonely night was an invitation into divine conversation. So let these words settle in your heart. You were not forgotten, you were being formed. Heaven was never punishing you, it was positioning you. Every no you received became the echo that guided you to the right. Yes. Comment light. Returns say it as prophecy over your life. You're not just typing words, you're agreeing with heaven's timing. You're declaring that even after rejection, your light will rise again. Stronger, purer, unstoppable. Because your rise doesn't begin when they accept you, it begins when you accept that you were never rejected at all. When you type light returns, you're not repeating a phrase, you're responding to heaven's invitation. You're saying, "I refuse to live in the shadow of rejection any longer." It's an act of agreement with divine order. A statement that light still belongs to you, even after the storm. Understand this, your light is not fragile. It's forged. Every trial has tempered it. Every tear has polished it. You are not stepping into light. You are becoming it. What once broke you now reflects through you. The return of your light is not coming from outside, it's rising from within. Rejection often disguises itself as the end of the story. But in truth, it is the beginning of revelation. It is in those moments when the world turns its face away, when the plans collapse, when silence seems endless, that heaven whispers the most. God does not abandon His chosen ones in the valley. He reveals Himself there. You have felt the sting of being misunderstood, the ache of being unseen, the loneliness that sits heavy after goodbyes you didn't choose. You have looked at the sky and asked, "Why, Lord, why now?" But hidden within those unanswered questions is divine purpose. Rejection strips away illusion. It exposes what cannot stay and reveals what must remain. Sometimes, God uses rejection to remove the scaffolding around your soul. You leaned on people, positions, and approval to stand tall. But He wants you rooted in Him alone. The removal is painful, but necessary. Without it, you would continue to depend on what was never meant to support you. Imagine a sculptor chiseling away stone. Each strike seems violent, unnecessary. But every fragment that falls reveals more of the masterpiece within. That's what God has been doing. The hammer you felt was not destruction, it was definition. He is carving your destiny out of what once held you captive. You were not created to stay in places that suffocate your purpose. The rejection you experienced was heaven's way of releasing you from spiritual suffocation. Had those doors remained open, you might have mistaken comfort for calling. God loves you too much to let that happen. There is beauty in the unraveling. There is grace in the loss. For it is in losing what is temporary that you learn to hold what is eternal. The people who walked away made space for peace. The opportunities that closed cleared your path for destiny. You may not see it yet, but heaven has been weaving behind the curtain. What looks like rejection from the front stage is often redirection happening backstage. While you cried over what ended, God was preparing what begins next. Consider Joseph, the dreamer who was rejected by his brothers, sold into slavery, and imprisoned for doing right. At every turn, he could have believed God abandoned him. Yet, those very rejections were redirections leading to the palace. The pit was preparation, the prison was positioning. When destiny finally called, Joseph was not just ready, he was refined. That same pattern moves through your life. Each heartbreak, each disappointment, each season of being overlooked has been part of your shaping. The waiting room of rejection is where heaven trains warriors of purpose. You are learning discernment in silence, patience in delay, endurance in obscurity. These are the treasures. Rejection brings the unseen fruits that sustain greatness. Anyone can celebrate acceptance. Only the chosen can survive rejection and still believe. It may hurt now, but you will one day bless the very moments that broke you. The night you cried the hardest will become the proof that God was closest. The pain that once blinded you will sharpen your vision. And when that happens, when you finally see the beauty in what was withheld, you will no longer ask, "Why me?" You will say, "Thank you, Lord, for trusting me with redirection." And, you see, rejection was never about disqualification. It was about purification. God wasn't removing you from people. He was removing the wrong patterns from within you, the need to please, the fear of losing, the craving for control. As was spoken in the sacred texts of the book of Hosea, chapter 6, verse 1, "Come, let us return to the Lord. He has torn us to pieces, but he will heal us. He has injured us, but he will bind up our wounds." End quote. That verse holds the tension of divine love. The same hand that allows pain is the one that heals it. The wound and the restoration come from the same source. The breaking is never meant to destroy, it is meant to direct. You are walking through a sacred exchange. God is trading your wounds for wisdom, your rejection for revelation. Every tear is currency in heaven. Nothing is wasted, nothing overlooked. Soon, the places that rejected you will no longer define you. You will stand before them transformed, not in pride, but in peace. You'll understand that their rejection did not remove your value, it revealed it. The sculptor is still working. The clay is still soft. The masterpiece is still becoming. And when the final layer of stone falls away, what will emerge is the truest version of you, refined, resilient, radiant. The same places that once wounded you will bear witness to your becoming, and the echoes of rejection will turn into songs of redemption. You've carried so much, and still, you're standing. That alone is proof of divine strength. Every time rejection tried to silence you, something inside whispered, "Not yet." That whisper wasn't your own. It was the breath of God reminding you that purpose cannot be cancelled. There comes a moment in every chosen life when you realize that rejection wasn't an ending. It was an invitation to begin again with heaven's direction. You've reached that moment now. Every tear has watered something unseen. Every delay has planted roots beneath your story. You thought you were buried, but you were being sown. What feels like an ending is often heaven's way of beginning something eternal. You see, God never let pine go unused. Even the seasons that feel wasted become sacred soil. The losses you faced weren't subtraction, they were cultivation. The barren fields you walked across are about to bloom again. Imagine this: a candle lit in a dark room. It doesn't argue with the darkness, it simply burns. That's you. Each rejection was a gust of wind meant to blow you out. Yet, here, you are still burning, still glowing, and the more you burn, the more others find their way through your light. This message you're hearing isn't just words, it's a reflection of the countless stories heaven is weaving together through voices like this one. When we share these messages, when we keep the flame alive, we create a lighthouse for those who are still wandering through their own rejection. And if this light has reached you, if it has brought peace to your heart, then you already understand the quiet miracle of shared purpose. You see, what keeps this light burning isn't force, it's love. It's those who, out of gratitude, help the flame continue. Just as rain returns to the sky through evaporation, so it can fall again. Every act of generosity you offer rises and returns multiplied. It's not a transaction, it's transformation. Supporting this flow, whether through a kind word, a share, a prayer, or even a small gift, is like adding oil to the lamp that lights the way for others. No one is required. Nothing is demanded. This has never been about obligation. It's about continuation. If you ever feel led, if something in your heart says, "I want to keep this light alive for someone else," you can freely do so. You become part of the story, part of the reason someone else doesn't give up. Like a stream feeding into a river, every small drop matters. When many streams flow together, they create a current strong enough to carry hope farther than any one voice could. That's what happens when you share, when you support, when you give, not because you must, but because you can. The prophet Haggai wrote, chapter 2, verse 19, "Is the seed still in the barn, as yet the vine, the fig tree, the pomegranate, and the olive tree have not yielded fruit, but from this day on I will bless you." Undo. Those words speak of potential waiting to bloom. Your act of giving whatever form it takes is simply releasing the seed from the barn so blessing can grow. The seed was never meant to stay stored. It was meant to touch soil, to multiply, to nourish others. Now, if this message has touched your heart, let your gratitude move freely. Like this message, if it reminded you that light still burns, share it forward so another heart might find warmth. Subscribe to stay close to the stream where heaven keeps pouring revelation. And if you ever feel led to donate, do it as if you're placing another log on a quiet fire in the night, not out of duty, but out of devotion. You're not paying for warmth, you're preserving it for the next traveler who finds themselves in the dark. When you share, subscribe, or give, you're not fueling a brand, you're fueling breakthrough. You're keeping the message alive for the one who will stumble upon it at midnight, just as you did, and find light instead of despair. And even if you can't give, your presence is already a sacred offering. Listening with an open heart keeps this fire alive. So, take this truth with you. Your life is a lamp, and every act of generosity, whether through time, word, or seed, is the oil that keeps it burning. There's no pressure, no guilt. Only the quiet beauty that light shared is light multiplied. Because the story isn't over. The light hasn't dimmed. The rejected ones are rising. And together, we are keeping the flame alive. There are moments when the soul feels stretched thin, when you look around and see everyone else moving forward while you're still standing still. You wonder if you missed something, if you failed some unseen test. But the truth is simpler and stronger. You are right where God wants you to be. The waiting you despise is the womb of direction. Every pause heaven allows has purpose. Sometimes God doesn't rush you because He's still rearranging the stage you're about to walk onto. The delay isn't punishment, it's precision. You've mistaken divine stillness for rejection. But stillness is where the seed learns to grow downward before it grows upward. Deep roots are not glamorous, but they're essential. Without them, your destiny would collapse under its own weight. There was a young woman named Leora who thought her life had fallen apart. Every plan she made seemed to crumble. Her career stalled. Her friendships faded. Her prayers felt unanswered. She cried and said, "God, have you forgotten me?" But during that silent season, she discovered something sacred. Her identity wasn't built on progress, but presence. When she finally surrendered her timeline, peace returned. A year later, new opportunities opened doors she hadn't even known existed. Looking back, she whispered, "If God had answered me too soon, I would have settled for less." No, that's what happens when rejection turns into redirection. Heaven withholds what you want to prepare you for what you need. The silence that surrounds you is not empty, it's full of instruction. God is teaching you to walk by faith, not familiarity. When you can no longer see what's ahead, you begin to hear what's within. Rejection carved space inside you for revelation. You no longer chase validation, you chase voice, the still, clear whisper of the one who never leaves. You are learning that purpose unfolds not at the speed of your desire, but at the rhythm of divine wisdom, as heaven speaks through the book of Psalms. Chapter 37, verse 7, "Be still before the Lord, and wait patiently for Him. Do not fret when people succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes." Those ancient words remind you, peace is not found in movement, but in trust. The race is not to the fastest, it belongs to those who refuse to run ahead of God. You have not been denied, you've been detained for refinement. When God delays, He is not dismissing you, He is developing you. The cocoon doesn't mean the butterfly is forgotten, it means transformation is underway. Let the silence do its work. Let patience become your worship. What feels like stillness is actually God breathing order into chaos. Every hidden season becomes the furnace of resilience. The world praises speed, but heaven honors surrender. While others sprint toward recognition, you are being taught revelation. And when your time comes, you won't just arrive, you'll emerge. Think of a sunrise. It doesn't rush to break the night. It moves in divine sequence. Darkness must lift in order for light to be appreciated. The same is true for you. When your light rises, it won't just reveal your strength, it will reveal God's strategy. There's a quiet confidence that grows in those who've been redirected. You no longer panic when people leave or when plans shift. You understand that divine delays are often disguised blessings. You begin to see rejection as the compass that points you toward your true north. So tonight, release the anxiety of unfinished dreams. Let patience do her perfect work. Trust that every pause, every delay, every no is woven into a greater yes. You have not missed your moment, you are maturing into it. When you truly grasp that truth, the ache of waiting will turn into worship. The same space that once felt empty will overflow with understanding. The waiting room is not wasted, it's sacred. It's where the chosen learn to rest while God rearranges the future. So take a deep breath. You are not behind. You are becoming. Comment 333 if you know this is speaking to you, not as superstition, but as a prophetic symbol that you trust divine timing. Let that number be your quiet agreement with heaven. I choose patience over panic, purpose over pressure, because you are not forgotten. You are being fine-tuned for fullness. And soon, when the door opens, you'll realize why it had to stay shut for so long. You'll see then that every unanswered prayer was an answered promise in disguise. What you thought was delay was divine defense. The door didn't stay closed to punish you. It stayed closed to protect you until your spirit was ready to walk through it with peace, not pressure. There are seasons in life when rejection feels relentless, one wave after another, until your spirit wonders if the tide will ever turn. It's in those times you start to question everything, your worth, your purpose, even your faith. Yet, these are the very seasons when heaven does its deepest work. You see, God never wastes pain. The things that broke your heart are the same things that will one day strengthen it. Every wound that seemed like proof of failure is actually a place where divine wisdom is being planted. Rejection, when you surrender it, becomes revelation. It is hard to see this while you're still standing in the storm. When you're watching pieces of your life scatter in the wind, all you want is for something, anything to make sense. But sense is not what God gives first. He gives strength. Understanding often comes later, after endurance has done its work. There's an old story of a craftsman who worked with glass. He created beautiful stained windows that shone like fire when the light touched them. One day, his apprentice accidentally broke a piece of glass meant for the center of the window. The boy apologized in tears, thinking he had ruined everything. But the master smiled, gathered the shards, and rearranged them into a pattern even more brilliant than before. Now, the craftsman said, the light will dance through the cracks. Now, that's what rejection does. It breaks the old pattern so a new one can emerge. It forces light into places you thought were ruined. The cracks don't destroy you, they become the pathways for glory to shine through. So if you feel like something in you has shattered, take heart. God is the craftsman. The fragments are not forgotten, they are being reshaped into something sacred. Rejection also teaches you to see people differently. Before, you may have tied your worth to how others viewed you, but through rejection, you learn compassion both for yourself and for those who didn't understand your calling. You realize not everyone who hurt you was cruel. Some simply couldn't carry the weight of your destiny. When Jesus walked among men, he too was rejected by the ones he came to love. Yet that rejection became the road to redemption. He didn't curse those who turned away. He used the pain to fulfill purpose. That same pattern is woven into your story. Your rejection is not random. It is redemption in motion. There's a sacred solitude that forms in such seasons. It's the quiet realization that even if no one else understands, heaven does. It's where you begin to stand differently, not in bitterness, but in balance. You learn that rejection isn't personal, it's positional. It moves you from where you were to where you're meant to be. As the Word of God declares in the book of James, chapter 1, verse 12, "Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because, having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him." Oh, that verse is not a metaphor, it's a map. Perseverance is the bridge between pain and promise. The test you're enduring now is not proof of abandonment, it's evidence of anointing. You were never called to live at the level of acceptance. You were called to rise through refinement. Rejection is how God refines the chosen. He cuts away what contaminates, removes what limits, and shapes what remains until his reflection appears in you. The process hurts. Yes, but even pain bows to purpose. Every moment of being misunderstood builds the humility required for higher ground. Every season of silence trains your ears to recognize God's whisper among the noise. When the time comes, and it will, you'll look back and realize that rejection didn't destroy you, it delivered you. It separated you from imitation and ushered you into authenticity. Think of a vineyard. The vine dresser cuts away healthy branches so that greater fruit can grow. The pruning feels harsh, but it's the only way to make room for abundance. So it is with your soul. Every no you faced is a divine trim preparing you for harvest. You will rise not in spite of rejection, but because of it. The very pain that once felt like poison is turning into power. You are no longer just surviving the storm, you are learning to command the wind. And one day soon, when the light breaks through the glass of your life, you'll understand why it had to be broken first. There comes a quiet moment after the storm, a sacred stillness when you finally stop fighting the wind and start listening to it. That is when you begin to see that rejection was never chaos. It was choreography. Every closed door, every unanswered message, every painful goodbye was guiding you with invisible precision. God has a way of using what looks like loss to lead you toward alignment. The path of the chosen is rarely straight. It bends, twists, and circles back. Not because God is confused, but because He's completing something inside you before He completes something around you. At first, you resist it. You want control. You want answers that make sense. But heaven teaches through detours. It lets you walk a road you didn't choose so you can become someone you couldn't have been otherwise. That's the beauty of divine redirection. It transforms you on the way. Rejection often feels like the world is shrinking, but in truth, it's expanding. God narrows your path not to restrict you, but to refine your focus. What once distracted you no longer fits the new version of who you are becoming. Think of a river as it flows through the earth. It curves, narrows, deepens, and sometimes vanishes underground. Yet it never loses direction. It always finds its way to the sea. You are that river. What feels like a disappearance is only depth being formed. There's something holy about being misunderstood. When people misjudge your heart or doubt your calling, you are being invited to a deeper conversation with God. It's as if heaven says, "Stop explaining yourself to those who can't see you. Let me show you who you truly are." That kind of revelation doesn't come in crowds. It comes in caves. It's in the hidden places after the applause fades, after the rejection cuts, that you begin to hear heaven's voice clearly. God doesn't need noise to communicate. He often speaks in whispers that only the humbled can hear. There was a man named Silas who thought his purpose had ended when he was dismissed from his position in ministry. Overnight, his name was removed from the list. His influence forgotten. He wept for weeks, thinking his voice had been silenced forever. But in that wilderness, he discovered a new voice, one not chained to recognition. Months later, a small gathering invited him to speak, and his words carried more power than ever before. What changed? The rejection had emptied him of pride and filled him with presence. This is how God works. He subtracts before he multiplies. He empties so he can put. He allows rejection to strip away what is shallow, so your spirit can hold what is sacred. And though it hurts, one day you will thank him for the things he didn't let stay. As the voice of heaven declares in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 31, verse 6, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them. For the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you." Those words are not a comfort for the weak. They are a command for the chosen. You are not walking through this alone. Even in your loneliest moments, divine companionship surrounds you. What left you could not take his presence away. When rejection burns, remember, ashes are not endings, they are beginnings. From the dust of disappointment, new purpose grows. You are being rebuilt with better material, wisdom, faith, endurance. Each closed door is a sermon, each silence a song. Heaven is not ignoring you, it's inviting you to trust deeper. The God who redirected you is the same one, walking beside you in the new direction. The pain you feel today is the birthplace of clarity. You are learning that your worth is not tied to outcomes, but to obedience, what others call loss. Heaven calls preparation. Rejection was the classroom where you learned resilience. It taught you that not being chosen by people does not mean you're not called by God. In fact, it's often the opposite. The less room you find in human circles, the more space heaven makes for your calling to unfold. Soon, you will look back and see that nothing was random. Every lonely night, every no, every closed chapter was essential. Rejection was simply a rerouting toward revelation. You are still being written into a story that doesn't end in sorrow, it ends in strength. The fire that tried to burn you is now refining you into gold. The broken pieces are aligning into a mosaic of glory, proof that even pain bows to divine design. And when that realization dawns, you won't feel bitterness for what left, you'll feel reverence for what stayed. God's hand, steady and sure, still guiding you forward. There comes a time when you stop asking why rejection happened and start asking what it produced. You begin to notice the quiet transformation, the patience where there used to be panic, the wisdom where there once was confusion. The peace that came after the storm refused to move. That's when you realize rejection was not your enemy, it was your escort to elevation. Every disappointment was carrying you, step by step, toward divine development. What you called delay, heaven called direction. What you thought was a loss, God labeled as lesson. The truth is, some doors had to close because the rooms behind them could no longer hold who you were becoming. You were outgrowing the space. And if God had let you stay, comfort would have crushed your calling. So he pulled you out, not to hurt you, but to free you. You are learning now that redirection is not about relocation, it's about revelation. It's not that God moved you somewhere else, it's that he moved something inside you. There was once a man named Callan who prayed for a breakthrough in his business. He worked hard, stayed faithful, and yet one day, his largest contract was suddenly cancelled. He felt betrayed, humiliated, forgotten. But in the months that followed, while searching for purpose again, Callan began to notice ideas stirring in his heart, ideas that didn't exist before the rejection. Out of loss came innovation. The business he built after that storm was far greater than what he lost. Later he said, "That rejection was the door God used to walk me into destiny." So it is with you. Every moment you thought God was silent, he was writing a new instruction on your heart. You are not behind. You are being built. The word of the Lord speaks through the book of Hebrews, chapter 10, verse 35. So do not throw away your confidence. It will be richly rewarded. Confidence, that is what rejection tried to steal, and what God is now restoring. Every time you stood back up, every time you kept believing when you had no reason to, heaven took note. Your perseverance has become prophecy. Rejection stripped you of reliance on people's praise so you could rediscover divine confidence. What you thought was humiliation was actually purification. God removed the dependence on external approval to anchor you in eternal assurance. And now, the same places that once hurt you will one day honor you. But it won't matter the same way, because you'll no longer need it. Your worth won't rise and fall with acceptance. It will rest in assurance. You have walked through the furnace and discovered that not all fire destroys, some fire defines. You are coming out refined, steady, unshaken. Think of a star. It shines because of internal combustion, not external light. Rejection taught you the same truth. You no longer borrow light from others. You generate it from within. What once broke your heart is now building your backbone. What once silenced your faith now sharpens your focus. You have become stronger in silence, wiser in waiting, and softer in spirit, all at once. So breathe deeply and remember this. Every no was heaven's redirection toward a better yes. The things that left didn't lessen you, they led you. You are no longer walking with the weight of rejection, you are walking with the wings of redirection. Comment, still rising, if this resonates with you, not as repetition, but as revelation, as a statement that no matter what tried to bury you, you're still standing, still believing, still rising, and as you declare it, understand what you're really saying. I survived the rejection. I embraced the redirection. And I am still rising because God has never stopped guiding. Your story is far from finished. In fact, it's only just beginning to shine. When you write "still rising," you are not echoing words, you are echoing resurrection. You're saying, even after everything I've lost, my spirit refuses to bow. That phrase is not a comment, it's a covenant between you and heaven that your story continues upward. Understand this. Rising does not always look like soaring. Sometimes it looks like standing up one more time after falling. Sometimes it's breathing through disappointment, whispering, "God, I still trust you," when nothing makes sense. Rising is quiet strength dressed in surrender. You rise not because you're untouched by rejection, but because you've been transformed by it. Each wound became a window for light to enter. Each silence became a sanctuary for wisdom. The rejection you endured didn't shrink your faith, it stretched it. And soon, your rising will not only lift you, it will illuminate others still trapped in their own rejection. Your endurance will become evidence that redirection works. Sometimes the most beautiful redirections happen quietly. There's no announcement, no celebration, just a slow turning of the soul towards something higher. You wake up one morning and realize the sting of rejection doesn't hurt like it used to. The wound has become wisdom. The tears have become oil for your next assignment. You begin to see it now, how every disappointment was divinely designed. The doors that closed were not rejection letters from heaven, they were handwritten invitations to new beginnings. What once felt like exile was actually an escort to destiny. God didn't abandon you in the wilderness. He was teaching you how to bloom there. Think of how rivers flow. They don't fight the rocks that block them. They simply curve, adjust, and keep moving until they find open space. That's what you've learned to do. You stopped pushing against rejection and started flowing with redirection. The result, peace. There was once an artist who lost her job after years of faithful service. For months she wept, feeling invisible and forgotten. But during her solitude, she began painting again, something she hadn't done in years. Each brushstroke became therapy, each canvas a prayer. One day, her work caught the eye of someone who offered her a new opportunity, one that aligned perfectly with her purpose. She later said, "Rejection didn't destroy me, it redirected my hands back to my gift." Ah oui, that's the beauty of it. When life removes one stage, God unveils another. The spotlight doesn't define you anymore, the source does. As the writings remind us in the second book of Corinthians, chapter 4, verse 17, "For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all." This scripture carries the heartbeat of redirection. What you're carrying now is producing something far greater than what you've lost. You are being prepared for glory you can't yet imagine. And as this truth settles into your heart, you realize something else. Your healing isn't just for you. It's a lantern for others. Every time you share your story, you become like a lighthouse guiding ships through their own storms of rejection. The waves that tried to drown you now light the way for someone else. That's why these messages exist, to be a bridge between brokenness and belief, a place where words meet wounds and healing begins to grow. Video. Each moment you pause to listen is another spark of that light. If this light has reached your heart, if something inside you feels peace again, then you already know the miracle of connection. Like this message, to let heaven know gratitude lives inside you. Share it forward so that someone else, someone standing where you once stood, can find the same peace. And if this message has become part of your healing journey, if you want to help it continue flowing to others, you can subscribe to stay connected, or even offer a small donation if you feel led. Not because you have to, but because it's beautiful to keep light alive. Think of it like tending a garden. When you pour water onto one flower, the fragrance spreads to many. Every act of kindness, every seed of support, helps the garden of hope grow wider. There is no obligation here, only opportunity. The chance to keep this voice echoing for those who haven't yet found theirs. Some give through finances, others through prayers, others through sharing the message. All are equally sacred. Every act, no matter how small, becomes a ripple of light in the dark. Because, truthfully, this mission doesn't belong to one person. It belongs to all who have ever been rejected and found redemption. You are not just a listener. You are part of the movement that turns ashes into altars. So if your heart feels stirred, respond in whatever way peace leads you. Whether it's a like, a share, a subscription, or a simple prayer whispered over this message, know that heaven counts it all as worship. You are helping keep a flame alive, not out of duty, but out of love. Because somewhere out there, someone is scrolling through the dark right now, waiting for a message like this to remind them that rejection was never the end. And when that person finds it, they won't just hear words, they'll feel the warmth of every heart that chose to keep this light burning. Each spark you help sustain becomes a beacon for another soul lost in the fog. Light has a way of multiplying. One heart ignited awakens another, until darkness has nowhere left to hide. Because love that gives never diminishes, it only deepens. The more light you release, the brighter heaven's reflection becomes within you. There is a strange peace that comes after you've walked through rejection and found meaning within it. It's not the loud kind of peace, it's quiet, deep, steady, the kind that no longer depends on things going your way. It's the realization that everything that left you had to leave for your heart to breathe freely again. Rejection has a way of cleaning the air around your soul. It removes what clouds your clarity, what hinders your hearing, what blocks your vision. At first, it feels cruel, but as time passes, you realize that heaven was making room for peace. You don't heal all at once. Healing is not a lightning bolt, it's sunrise. It happens slowly, softly, in layers. The darkness doesn't disappear in a second, but the light begins to spread. One day, you notice it. The things that used to hurt no longer have the same power. You are calmer, stronger, wiser. Sometimes, you have to lose what you thought you needed to discover who you actually are. That's what rejection does. It exposes false identities. It strips away the masks you wore to fit in. It shows you that being chosen by God is far greater than being accepted by people. There was a woman named Selah who once defined her worth by others' opinions. When people praised her, she felt alive. When they criticized her, she crumbled. Then came a season of rejection. Friends distanced themselves. Plans failed. Promises were broken. For months, she questioned her value, but slowly, she began to hear another voice, the one that spoke before the world ever labeled her. It said, "You are mine." That was the moment she stopped chasing acceptance and started walking in assurance. Rejection became her refining fire, and from it, she emerged with a faith unshakable and a peace unbreakable. God often uses rejection to reset your direction inward, to remind you that your value doesn't fluctuate with people's perception. He doesn't need others to recognize you in order to bless you. When the world pushes you out, heaven pulls you closer. As written in the book of Proverbs, chapter 3. verses 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. Oh, those words are not passive advice, they are active surrender. Trust requires release. It means letting go of your timeline, your explanations, your need to understand why things ended the way they did. It's giving God permission to guide without constant questioning. When you trust like that, peace comes. Not the fragile kind that depends on outcomes, but the resilient kind that stands in storms. You begin to see rejection not as punishment, but as partnership with a God who knows what you cannot see. Every rejection, every ending, every silence was a redirecting hand. God was never absent. He was just working quietly, rearranging your steps until they aligned with purpose. It's like being in a dark room where photographs are developed. The images can't be rushed. They need time, temperature, and the right amount of darkness to form. Step out too early, and the picture blurs. Stay long enough, and clarity emerges. That's how destiny works. Your time in the dark wasn't wasted. It was necessary. What you thought was isolation was actually incubation. God hid you to heal you. He set you apart to strengthen you. The peace you carry now didn't come cheap. It was forged through confusion, heartbreak, and surrender. That's why it's unshakable, because you earned it through endurance. And when you finally see the pattern, the thread of grace weaving through every rejection, you'll realize that you were never losing. You were learning. Every no was protection. Every delay was direction. Every heartbreak was preparation. Rejection is not the opposite of purpose. It's the instrument of it. The road that broke you became the road that built you. Now, when you look back, you no longer feel bitterness, you feel gratitude. Gratitude for what left, because it led you here. Gratitude for what didn't work, because it worked something greater within you. That is the quiet miracle of redirection. It doesn't just change your path, it changes your posture. You no longer walk in fear, you walk in faith. You no longer strive to be seen, you rest in being known. And that, chosen one, is where true peace begins. Peace like that can't be taken, it can only be carried. It walks with you into every new chapter, whispering that nothing was wasted. Every rejection was simply a redirection toward rest. And now, your soul finally knows what it means to be still and whole. There's a shift that happens when you stop resisting what God allowed and start embracing what He revealed. Suddenly, rejection doesn't sting the same way. You see it for what it was: divine editing. God wasn't deleting your story, He was refining it, line by line, until it carried the power of His intention. It's strange, isn't it? How the things that once broke you now build your faith. You thought rejection would end your journey, but it only clarified your direction. You thought silence meant God had left, but He was speaking through stillness, preparing you for something only solitude could teach. Every closed door you faced was a doorway to growth. Every unanswered prayer was an invitation to trust, and every person who left made room for presence, God's presence, to fill the empty places they could never satisfy. You're learning that divine redirection doesn't always come with explanation. Sometimes it just comes with peace. The kind of peace that doesn't erase questions but renders them powerless. You no longer need to know why, because you've begun to know who. There was once a young man named Elior. After years of dedication, his dream job slipped through his fingers. He'd done everything right, yet the door slammed shut. At first, he fought to reopen it, sending messages, calling contacts, begging for one more chance. But when every effort failed, he finally surrendered. In that surrender, I heard God's quiet voice. "I'm not rejecting you, I'm redirecting you." 2 months later, Elior received an unexpected offer, one that aligned perfectly with his gifts and heart. He later said, "I thought rejection broke me, but it actually bent me toward purpose." And that's how divine redirection works. It bends you toward blessing. The word of the Lord reminds us in the book of Isaiah, chapter 43, verse 19. "See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland." End of That promise still lives today. God doesn't simply restore what was lost. He replaces it with something greater. He takes the ashes of rejection and turns them into the soil of renewal. You might not see the full picture yet, but one day, when you look back, you'll understand that rejection was never about lack. It was about positioning. You had to leave certain places so your purpose could find its proper space. You were never forgotten in the process. Heaven was simply building your capacity to receive more than you asked for. The delay wasn't divine silence. It was divine structure. God was laying foundations deep beneath the surface, so what's next would last. This is where your faith matures. You stop chasing explanations and start choosing expectation. You trust that if something closed, something greater must be opening. You are learning to walk with a lighter heart, to release control, to let go of the need to fix what God already finished. You've realized that peace is not found in having everything you want. It's found in knowing that everything you have is in His hands. Even the things that didn't work out are working for you. The rejection that once felt like the end has become the evidence of protection. Heaven didn't say no to punish you. It said, "Not here," to preserve you. Every redirection, every pause, every change in course was God's mercy, not His judgment. He saw what you couldn't. He moved what you wouldn't. And now you are standing in a place of quiet strength, able to say, "It had to happen this way." So, lift your head and breathe again. You survived the silence. You outlasted the no's. You're not behind, you're being aligned. Comment 111 if this word speaks to you not as superstition, but as a prophetic sign of oneness with Heaven's plan. It declares, "I'm in alignment with God's will. I choose peace over panic, trust over control, and destiny over doubt." Let that number be your personal seal of faith, your reminder that redirection is divine partnership, not punishment. Because this is not the end of your story, it's the unveiling of what all those rejections were preparing you for. What once felt like closed gates are now opening as golden pathways, and as you walk them, you'll realize something extraordinary. Rejection didn't change your destiny, it revealed it. When you write 111, you're not typing a number, you're echoing agreement with heaven. You're saying, "My path is aligned, my heart is steady, and my steps are guided." It's a declaration that you trust the author of your story to finish every chapter with glory. Not grief, with faith, not fear. There is a quiet transformation that takes place after you've walked long enough with rejection and discovered that it was grace wearing a disguise. You no longer view it as a wound that never healed, but as the very place where God rewrote your story. The pain that once made you question your worth now reminds you of your resilience. You begin to see how every loss refined your discernment. You no longer rush into rooms that don't carry peace. You've learned that not every open door is divine, and not every opportunity is meant to be yours. Rejection trained your spirit to recognize imitation before it wastes your time. At first, you fought to understand why things ended the way they did. You replayed conversations, analyzed decisions, and tried to find closure from people who could never give it. But closure, you've learned, doesn't come from them, it comes from acceptance. It comes from realizing that God's no is sometimes his loudest protection, like a shepherd who blocks the path of a wandering sheep to save it from danger. God uses rejection to reroute you away from destruction. What you perceived as delay was mercy, keeping you from something that would have broken you beyond repair. There was a time when you didn't see it. You mistook divine distance for divine disapproval. But now, when you look back, you can trace the pattern. Every heartbreak taught you endurance. Every setback sharpened your faith. Every misunderstanding pushed you deeper into the only place that never rejects his presence. You once prayed for acceptance. Now you pray for alignment. You once chased people. Now you chase peace. The person you're becoming was born through every no you thought would destroy you. There's a subtle strength that grows in silence. You stop needing to prove your worth and start resting in it. The opinions that used to shake you now barely move you. You've realized that rejection cannot define someone who's already been chosen. The scriptures tell us in the book of Romans, chapter 5, verses 3 and 4, we glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character. Hope. Those words capture the very process you've endured. Rejection produced perseverance. Perseverance shaped your character. And from that character, hope was born. Hope that no matter how many times the world closes its doors, heaven still has one open just for you. You are no longer angry about what left. You're grateful it did. The people who walked away weren't part of your next chapter. They were part of your preparation. The opportunities that fell through weren't failures. They were filters keeping you pure for purpose. Sometimes, God allows rejection to keep your heart from contamination. He closes certain paths because he knows that not every environment can sustain your anointing. What feels like exclusion is actually preservation. Look at a seed in the soil. It's pressed down, buried in darkness, unseen. To the untrained eye, it looks forgotten, but underneath, transformation is happening. Roots are forming. Life is expanding. And in time, the breakthrough appears. That's you. The burial wasn't the end. It was the beginning of becoming. You've outgrown the need for validation. You don't chase the spotlight anymore because you've realized your glow doesn't depend on visibility. It depends on authenticity. God didn't call you to be accepted. He called you to be anointed. The peace that fills you now isn't denial, it's depth. You understand that every painful moment was sacred training. You were learning how to endure silence without losing faith. How to face rejection without losing identity. How to keep loving even when unloved. That is the mark of a refined soul. Rejection used to make you feel small. Now it reminds you how resilient you are. You see that every time someone walked away, it created more room for God's presence. The emptiness that used to ache has become a sanctuary of strength. This stage of your journey is not about recovery, it's about revelation. You are seeing yourself through heaven's eyes, realizing that nothing in your story was wasted. Every tear watered the roots of purpose. Every unanswered prayer protected your calling. Now, when you encounter another no, you don't panic, you pause. You ask, what is God redirecting me toward this time? That question comes not from fear but from faith. You've learned that His guidance often comes disguised as rejection. So, you move forward differently now, slower, steadier, wiser. You no longer fear endings because you know they are simply gateways to greater beginnings. You no longer fight the pruning because you trust the gardener. And as you walk, you carry a quiet assurance. You were never truly rejected. You were rerouted, refined, and redefined. The rejection that once felt like the end of everything has become the proof that God's hand was on you all along. Redirection is rarely comfortable, but it is always intentional. You've learned that truth through every painful detour, through every unanswered question that echoed in your chest. There's a kind of wisdom that only comes from walking through doors that never opened, from loving people who couldn't stay, from standing in rooms where you didn't belong and realizing that you no longer needed to. You see now that rejection wasn't simply about people turning away, it was about heaven turning your gaze upward. Every no pulled your attention from what was temporary to what was eternal. Every disappointment dismantled an illusion, until only truth remained. You no longer chase what doesn't carry peace. You don't beg for belonging, because you finally understand that chosen people don't compete, they complete. You're not meant to fit into every circle, because your assignment is not to blend in, but to stand apart. There's a sacredness in that realization. It releases you from striving, from needing to prove your worth. You stop trying to earn what was already given divine purpose. And once that revelation takes root, freedom grows where fear once lived. God has been teaching you the language of release. It's not easy to learn. At first, you resisted trying to reopen closed doors, replaying memories, asking what went wrong. But release means letting go of the idea that things had to stay in order to be meaningful. It means trusting that endings can still be holy. You've begun to see that every separation carried an unseen mercy. If you had stayed where you were, your spirit would have settled. You would have missed the new land forming just beyond the horizon of heartbreak. There was a man named Aaron who prayed for promotion at his job. He believed he was ready, but the opportunity went to someone else. For weeks, he wrestled with rejection, questioning his abilities. But one evening, while walking home, he felt an unexpected peace, a whisper saying, "What if this is protection, not punishment?" Months later, the company collapsed, and the new position he once envied disappeared with it. Aaron realized that what he called rejection was divine redirection, disguised as disappointment. That is how God works. He moves before the collapse. He closes doors before storms arrive. His silence is not neglect, it's navigation. As written in the book of Nahum, chapter 1, verse 7, "The Lord is good, a refuge in times of trouble. He cares for those who trust in Him." Those ancient words still breathe life today. They remind you that divine care sometimes looks like closed doors, cancelled plans, and quiet rooms. God's goodness doesn't always appear in gain, Sometimes it hides in the grace of what was withheld. You've stopped asking, "Why didn't it work?" and started asking, "What did I learn?" That question shifts everything. It turns pain into perspective, wounds into wisdom, and rejection into revelation. The moments that once made you feel powerless are now the memories that make you grateful. You realize that every heartbreak peeled away another layer of dependence on people, and in its place, you found divine dependence. Rejection used to sound like silence. Now it sounds like redirection. You no longer interpret absence as abandonment. You see it as preparation. Every time something left your life, it made space for what was meant to stay. Even now, heaven is still guiding you through invisible alignments. The steps you take may not make sense yet, but they are ordered. Every pause has purpose. Every detour heeds destiny. You've learned to appreciate the wilderness not as punishment, but as preparation. The solitude you once feared has become your sanctuary. The time you thought you lost has become your training ground. And the pain that once defined you now refines you. There's a quiet glow that surrounds those who have been redirected. You carry it now. It's not pride, it's peace. It's the kind of peace that comes from knowing you no longer need to understand everything in order to trust the one who does. You have stepped into maturity, the kind that doesn't flinch when rejection comes again. Because it will. But now, you recognize its face. You'll greet it not with fear, but with faith. You'll say, "Welcome, teacher. Show me what I need to see." Oh, rejection, once your greatest pain, has become your greatest mentor. It taught you how to stand, how to see, how to surrender. It introduced you to a version of yourself you didn't know existed, the one who doesn't break when things end, but bends gracefully toward what begins next. And as you keep walking, that understanding will light your path. You'll find that rejection was never a setback. It was a summons to rise, to trust, to move in rhythm with divine redirection. The further you travel along this road of redirection, the more you realize how purposeful every mile has been. You no longer see rejection as a bruise, but as a blueprint. Each step, even the painful ones, carried instructions for your becoming. Every detour shaped your direction. Every delay deepened your discernment. There's a serenity in that understanding. You stop resenting what didn't work and begin to honor what it taught you. Even the hardest no's softened your heart, teaching you compassion for others who wander through their own valleys of rejection. You've walked through enough endings to recognize that loss is not the opposite of love. It is proof that you were brave enough to care. Your journey, chosen one, has become a tapestry of lessons stitched together by grace. The thread may have passed through darkness, but the design is divine. As written in the book of Hebrews, chapter 6, verse 10, God is not unjust. He will not forget your work and the love you have shown him as you have helped his people and continue to help them. That verse reminds you that heaven records every act of love, every moment of endurance. Every time you chose faith over frustration, nothing you've done in obedience is ever overlooked. Now, look at your life. Even the scars shimmer with meaning. The rejections that once felt cruel have become holy markers of where God intervened. Every closed door was a border of protection drawn by mercy. You've become a living story, a reminder that divine detours still lead to destiny. And as that realization settles in, gratitude begins to flow like a quiet river. If this message finds you resting in that same river, let it wash over you gently. Like this reflection, if you feel peace blooming again where pain once lived, each like becomes a candle lit in the dark, a small act of agreement that says, I see the purpose now. And if your heart feels a stirring of recognition, share this message forward. Somewhere, another soul is sitting in the same silence you once endured. Your sharing may be the thread that leads them back to hope. And if something in these words has touched a hidden place within you, leave a comment, not for noise, but as a note in the symphony of faith. Each word written below becomes another heartbeat added to the rhythm of this message, reminding heaven that gratitude still breathes here. These words are not just meant to be heard, they're meant to be held and passed along like light from one lantern to another. When you pass light, you don't lose it, you multiply it. You can also subscribe, not as a formality, but as a way of saying, I want to stay near the flame that warms my faith. Subscription here is not a digital act, it's a spiritual posture. A willingness to keep walking with words that restore your strength. And if this river of messages has refreshed you, if you've found healing in the current, you might feel led to donate, not out of duty, but out of delight. Think of it as returning one drop to the source that quenched your thirst, like pouring water back into the river that sustained you. It isn't about obligation, it's about participation. Every gift, no matter how small, becomes a ripple of kindness, a quiet way of saying, let the light keep flowing. Oh, you see, this mission isn't built on demands, it's built on devotion. The same way rain nourishes unseen roots, your support nourishes unseen hearts. Someone you'll never meet may find healing because you decided to keep this stream alive. And even if all you can give is your listening, your presence, your silent amen, that, too, is offering. Heaven sees the heart behind every gesture. When you like, share, comment, subscribe, or donate, you are not responding to a request, you are answering a calling. You are becoming part of a larger symphony of souls, turning pain into purpose. One story at a time. So, if your spirit feels full right now, let it overflow in whatever form feels right. Whisper a prayer, send a spark, sow a seed. Each act, however simple, adds another strand of grace to this unfolding tapestry of redemption. You are not supporting a platform, you are sustaining a purpose. You are helping to keep a lantern lit for the next wanderer who will find their way by its light. And as you do, remember, the same hand that redirected you is still writing beauty through your generosity, your love, your willingness to give what cannot be measured heart. Every gesture, every flame, every offering says one thing: the light still lives here. There comes a point in every journey where reflection replaces resistance. You stop demanding answers from heaven and start recognizing the quiet guidance that's been there all along. Every closed door begins to make sense. Every delay turns out to be divine. The rejection that once burned now glows with meaning. It takes time to reach that place. Time and tears. You don't get there through instant revelation, but through gradual surrender, through nights spent wondering, why me? Until your heart finally whispers back, why not me? If purpose requires this path, rejection was never random. It was precise, surgical, sacred. It removed what could not go with you into the next season. It stripped away false comfort so you could be clothed in true conviction. It wasn't cruelty, it was calibration. Now, when you look back, you can see that God was guiding your every step. Even through what felt like ruin, what you thought was collapse was construction. What looked like emptiness was expansion. Every moment of being turned away was a turning point, directing you closer to who you were meant to be. It's like gold refined in fire. The metal must melt before it shines. The heat that once seemed unbearable now proves its worth. Without it, the beauty would remain buried. You, too, have been refined by the flames of rejection, and in that refining, the impurities, fear, doubt, pride have been burned away. What remains is pure strength. You may not have noticed it at first, but something changed in you during those painful seasons. You began to see differently, feel differently, move differently. You learned to pause before reacting, to listen before speaking, to trust before understanding. Rejection birthed affliction, and reflection birthed revelation. There was once a teacher named Miriam who poured her life into her students. One year, the school decided not to renew her contract without warning. She was devastated, certain her work had been in vain. For months she felt lost, forgotten, and angry. But in that silence, she began tutoring a few children from her neighborhood, teaching them not just lessons but life. Those small gatherings grew into a community center that transformed countless lives. Years later, Miriam said softly, "When they rejected me, I thought my purpose had ended. I didn't realize God was giving it room to expand." End quote. That's the rhythm of divine redirection. What feels like subtraction is often multiplication in disguise. The scriptures affirm this truth in the book of Joshua, chapter 1, verse 9. "Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." Those words stand as an anchor for anyone walking through uncertainty. Strength is not the absence of fear, it's faith continuing forward despite it. Courage is not confidence in yourself, it's trust in the one who walks beside you. Even when the path twists in ways you didn't expect, you can rest in that promise now. The fear of rejection no longer haunts you because you've discovered something stronger: resilience. You've lived through closed doors and still found new openings. You've survived silence and still heard his voice. You've been redirected so many times that now you no longer panic. When plans change, you simply pivot, knowing there's purpose in the turn. There's a gentle power in this maturity. You don't need applause anymore. You don't need validation. You don't even need explanation. You've learned that peace is evidence enough that you're where you should be. The rejection that once made you question your identity has become the proof of your divine authenticity. You no longer chase opportunities, you attract alignment. You no longer beg to belong, you simply bloom where God plants you. Every trial trained you to treasure timing. Every disappointment deepened your dependence on grace. And through it all, you've learned the rarest lesson of all, that redirection is not about movement, but about mastery. It's about mastering patience, surrender, and faith in the unseen hand that leads. You have become a student of divine order, a living example of how grace turns grief into growth. What once broke you now builds you daily. What once silenced you now speaks through you. You've turned pain into perspective, rejection into revelation, and loss into legacy. And even now, as you walk in the aftermath of everything you've endured, you carry no bitterness, only balance. You've been shaped into someone who can look at the past and smile, not because it was easy, but because it was essential. The roads you once feared are now sacred landmarks. The seasons you once prayed away are now testimonies of transformation. You are not who you were before rejection found you, and that's the miracle. You are wiser, softer, steadier. You are the proof that divine redirection does not destroy, it defines. At last, the path begins to make sense. You look back over the miles of rejection, redirection, silence, and surrender, and you can finally trace the pattern. Every season that felt scattered now forms a line of divine logic. Every pain, every pause, every no fits into a story that could not have been written any other way. You realize that God never wasted a single moment. He used every heartbreak to soften your spirit, every closed door to shape your discernment, every delay to deepen your dependence. What once felt like divine distance was, in truth, His hand guiding you closer to yourself and to Him. Rejection has become your teacher, not your tormentor. It taught you to listen instead of react, to trust instead of control, to rest instead of resist. It was never meant to define you, it was meant to develop you. You are standing now at the threshold of understanding. You can look back without bitterness, because you finally see what was being built. You can face the future without fear, because you've already survived what once scared you most. There's a quiet majesty in arriving here, not the kind that shouts or shows off, but the kind that simply knows. You know you are chosen. You know you are covered. You know that even when plans crumble, purpose still stands. The Word of God reminds us through the writings of the Apostle Paul in the book of 2 Corinthians, chapter 12, verse 9, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Oh, that verse is not just comfort, it's confirmation. The grace that carried you through rejection was never fragile. It was fierce, steady, and sure. When you were too weak to hold yourself up, grace held you together. It was there in every lonely night, in every prayer that ended in silence, in every step that didn't make sense but still moved you forward. Now, grace is not just something you receive, it's something you embody. The same grace that found you in your lowest place is now the light you carry into the world. You've become a vessel of restoration, a voice of reassurance to others who are still standing where you once stood. The journey through rejection wasn't about proving your strength, it was about revealing His. Every wound became a window for His light to shine through. Every tear washed away what was false, so truth could remain. When you look in the mirror now, you don't see the broken version of yourself, you see the rebuilt one. You see the reflection of someone who has walked through the valley and found beauty there. Someone who knows that peace is not the absence of pain, but the presence of purpose. You are no longer defined by who left or what didn't work. You are defined by who stayed God. His presence never departed. Even in your lowest points, He was aligning your life like an artist arranging strokes on a canvas, knowing that distance and color must balance to create depth. Rejection was simply His brush, creating contrast so your true colors could appear. Without it, your story would have been flat, unfinished. Now, Every scar adds texture. Every trial adds tone. Every tear adds reflection. You are art in progress, painted by eternal hands. And as you stand here now, in the clarity of hindsight, your heart whispers something it never could before. Thank you. Thank you for what didn't happen. Thank you for what ended. Thank you for what broke. Because it built me. Gratitude becomes your final response, not for the pain itself, but for the purpose it produced. The seasons of rejection are over, but their lessons will live forever. You walk forward with open hands now, no longer clutching what was, but ready to receive what is. You don't rush ahead or look back with regret. You walk in rhythm with grace, unhurried and unharmed, carrying wisdom that only wilderness could teach. And deep inside, you know the truth that changes everything. You were never truly rejected. You were redirected toward redemption. The path was never punishment. It was preparation. The detour was never delay. It was destiny in disguise. Everything makes sense now, not because you understand every detail, but because you trust the designer. You are living proof that divine redirection works, that grace never fails, and that the chosen are never truly cast aside. They are simply called higher. You were never lost. You were being led. The same hand that allowed the breaking has now positioned you for blooming. What once wounded you now whispers wisdom. Rejection was always redemption in progress. And now, chosen one, your journey through rejection, redirection, and revelation comes full circle. You can breathe again, not because everything is perfect, but because you finally understand that perfection was never the goal. Peace was, purpose was, and both have found you right here, right now. The message has settled, but the mission continues. Somewhere out there, another heart is still breaking under the weight of rejection. Another soul is still questioning its worth. You have the power to reach them, not through grand gestures, but through small sparks of connection. If this message has spoken to you, like it not as a click, but as a candle lit in gratitude. Each like becomes a signal of awakening, a whisper to heaven that you've understood. Rejection was not destruction, it was direction. Share this message with someone who might be standing where you once stood. Your act of sharing is like passing a lantern down a long road. It could be the one light that keeps them from giving up tonight. And when your heart stirs, leave a comment below. Let it be a ripple in the river of grace, a testimony that healing is happening here. Every word written becomes a seed in this growing garden of hope, proof that love still multiplies in silence. If these words have found you in the right season, subscribe to stay near the flow. This is not just following a channel, it's choosing to remain close to a voice that reminds you of peace when the world grows loud. And if gratitude fills your spirit, and you feel led to donate, do it with peace, not pressure. Think of it as placing a drop of oil in a lamp that warms wandering hearts. Ach Contribution, no matter how small, keeps the flame alive for someone who still searches for light. You are under no demand, only divine invitation. Each gesture, whether through a like, a share, a word, or a gift, becomes another echo of grace. So, walk forward, radiant and free. Let your S